Okay, so you've been sending over all this Burgundy stuff.
Articles, links, even a newsletter with some...
Really incredible photos.
I mean, clearly you're ready to go deep on this whole French wine region thing.
Maybe you're already picturing yourself there.
Walking through the vineyards.
Glass of wine in hand.
Maybe even trying to say Pouligny Montrachet with a perfect French accent.
But no matter what stage of Burgundy dreaming you're in right now.
I've brought in an expert to unpack not just the what of Burgundy, but the why.
Why is this place so special?
Especially for wine lovers like us.
But before we get too far, I want to make sure we're all on the same page.
When we talk about the Burgundy wine route,
We're talking about an actual, very specific route through the region,
think of it like a path.
leading you through the heart of Burgundy's most famous appellations.
And just so you know, appellations just means officially designated wine growing areas.
But here's what's really cool about this route.
It's not just about going from winery to winery.
It's about experiencing something that is completely unique to Burgundy. The climates.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating about the climates is that they take the concept of terroir to a whole new level.
Imagine thousands of tiny plots of land,
Each one meticulously defined and named.
with its own distinct soil composition, microclimate, and even grape variety.
It's this incredibly detailed classification system. That's why Burgundy wines are known for their diversity and complexity.
Even within a relatively small area.
So even before we get into specific grapes and flavors,
We're already seeing how Burgundy is in a league of its own.
speaking of which,
I noticed in the newsletter that stunning picture.
rows of Chardonnay grapes bathed in golden sunlight.
The caption mentions Pouligny Montrachet.
I have to admit that name sounds incredibly fancy.
Can you demystify that a bit for us?
What makes Chardonnay from Burgundy, and especially from this particular place, so sought after?
Yeah, you're right. Pouligny Montrachet is like the holy grail for Chardonnay lovers.
And for good reason.
While Chardonnay is grown all over the world,
What makes Burgundies, particularly those from Pouligny Montrachet, so unique?
is, you guessed it, terroir.
We're talking limestone-rich soils,
High concentration of calcium carbonate.
which gives the wines this incredible minerality.
Almost chalky texture,
Then you factor in the cool climate and long growing season,
which allow the grapes to develop nice and slow.
resulting in wines with intense aromas, complex flavors.
And this beautiful balance between acidity and richness.
And we can't forget the human element,
Generations of winemakers have honed their skills over centuries.
perfecting the art of cultivating Chardonnay in this very specific place.
It's amazing to think that a single glass of wine can hold so much history and nuance.
Now, I know I'm not alone in sometimes struggling with food and wine pairings.
Thankfully, one of the articles you shared is a beginner's guide to pairing French wines with food.
No, I have to admit, I tend to go towards that classic red wine with red meat combo.
But I'm sensing there's a lot more to explore when it comes to Burgundy
What are some classic pairings for Burgundy wines?
that maybe our listener would want to try.
You're right, Burgundy offers a fascinating range,
When it comes to food pairings,
and it goes way beyond the usual suspects.
you mentioned the mini potato dauphinoise recipe.
That creamy, rich dish.
Would actually be a beautiful match with a lighter-bodied Burgundy Pinot Noir
The wine's bright acidity
and earthy notes,
would cut through the richness of the potatoes.
creating a perfect harmony of flavors.
See, that's the kind of insider knowledge I need.
That pairing alone makes me want to book a flight right now.
But before I get too carried away,
The newsletter also mentioned all those castles and chateaux.
scattered throughout the region.
Is that just a coincidence?
Or is there a historical connection?
Between those grand estates and the wine we're talking about.
Well, if we zoom out and look at the bigger picture, you'll see a deep historical link.
During the Middle Ages, the Dukes of Burgundy were massive players in the wine industry.
They weren't just rulers.
They were serious patrons of winemaking
They owned vast vineyards.
and really shaped the region's viticultural landscape.
Many of those fairy tale-like castles you see dotting the hillsides were once their opulent residences.
Serving as tangible reminders of Burgundy's long and prestigious winemaking heritage.
So when you sip a glass of Burgundy, you're tasting centuries of history ambition.
Maybe even a little royal intrigue.
Now, while wine is undeniably the star of the show in Burgundy,
I get the sense there's more to this region than just grapes and barrels.
you sent over this list.
10 plus best places to see in Burgundy.
It hints that this is a destination that's about so much more than just wine.
What are some standout spots
Beyond the vineyards,
that our listener might want to check out?
you're absolutely right. Burgundy is a feast for the senses.
And that extends far beyond the wine glass.
Let's start with Dijon.
A city that's practically synonymous with mustard.
But it's so much more than that.
Its historic center is a UNESCO World Heritage Site,
Boasting cobblestone streets, medieval architecture,
and the magnificent palace of the Dukes of Burgundy.
which, as we've discussed, ties directly back to the region's winemaking heritage.
So we're seeing those historical connections pop up everywhere. And for those who want to get some fresh air,
There's the Morven Regional Natural Park,
it's a haven for hikers and bikers.
with its rolling hills, dense forests, and serene lakes,
Imagine yourself exploring hidden trails,
breathing in that crisp air.
maybe even stumbling upon a charming countryside restaurant for a leisurely lunch.
It sounds like the perfect balance to all those wine tastings.
So whether you're a foodie, a history buff, or a nature enthusiast,
Burgundy has something to offer everyone.
precisely,
It's a destination that caters to a variety of interests.
making it an ideal choice for a multifaceted travel experience.
Okay, let's be honest.
The wine is a huge part of the draw,
You mentioned this word terroir earlier.
which seems to be central to understanding what makes Burgundy wine so special
Can you break down for us what terroir actually means?
and why it matters so much in this particular region.
Of course.
Terroir is a French term that encompasses all the environmental factors.
That influence the character of a wine?
Think soil, composition, climate, altitude.
Even the angle of the hillside.
All of these elements come together to create a unique sense of place.
That's reflected in the final product.
So it's not just about the grape variety itself,
Exactly. You could take the same Pinot Noir grapes and plant them in California or New Zealand.
and you'd get a completely different wine.
That's the magic of terroir.
And in Burgundy, where they've been meticulously mapping and classifying their vineyards for centuries.
They take this concept very, very seriously.
And that's why Burgundy wines are often considered so complex and sought after by collectors, right?
Absolutely. Each bottle is like a snapshot of a specific place and time.
Capturing the essence of that particular plot of land.
Here's where I think it gets really interesting for our listener.
Even if they're not planning on dropping a fortune on a rare vintage,
Why should understanding terroir matter?
to someone who's just starting to explore the world of wine,
Because it transforms you from a passive drinker.
into an active participant,
Imagine picking up a bottle of Burgundy
knowing that those subtle notes of cherry and spice are directly linked,
to the iron-rich clay soil of a specific hillside.
or that the wine's velvety texture comes from the limestone bedrock beneath the vines.
Suddenly, you're not just tasting a beverage,
You're experiencing a story, a connection to the earth.
and a deeper appreciation for the craftsmanship.
That goes into each bottle.
So it's like having a secret decoder ring for the language of wine.
Now I'm seeing this big bus Paris hop-on, hop-off tour being recommended,
As a way to experience France,
and that got me thinking.
how accessible is Burgundy from Paris?
Can you just pop over for a day trip?
Or does it require more of a dedicated journey?
Well, it's certainly possible to do a day trip from Paris to Burgundy.
I wouldn't recommend it.
You'd be rushing through some of the most beautiful countryside.
And missing out on the true essence of the region.
To really soak it all in, you need at least a few days.
Preferably a week or more if you want to explore at a leisurely pace.
There are high-speed trains that can whisk you from Paris to Dijon
In about an hour and a half.
or to Bain, another major town on the wine route.
In under 2 hours.
So while it's not exactly a spontaneous jaunt,
It's definitely doable as part of a longer French adventure.
that makes sense.
It's about quality over quantity, right?
And while we're on the topic of other wine regions,
I noticed one of the photos you sent was from Saint-Emilion.
which is in Bordeaux, right?
You've got a sharp eye.
Another legendary French wine region,
It's known for its powerful Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot-based blends.
offering a completely different flavor profile and wine experience compared to Burgundy,
We could easily do a whole separate deep dive.
into comparing and contrasting the two regions.
Now you're speaking my language.
I love a good wine region showdown.
But for now, let's stick with Burgundy.
I also saw a recommendation for Picardy in the newsletter.
Can you give us a quick geography lesson?
Where is that in relation to Burgundy?
And what makes it worth a visit?
Picardy is located north of Paris.
So geographically, it's quite a distance from Burgundy.
But what's fascinating here is that it offers a completely different perspective.
On French history and culture,
It's a region of grand cathedrals,
like the Amiens Cathedral,
which is actually the largest in France.
even bigger than Notre Dame,
Then you have the Somme,
a vast estuary known for its stunning natural beauty.
an importance during World War I.
So Picardy is more about grand architecture, historical battlefields, and coastal landscapes.
While Burgundy is all about rolling vineyards, charming villages, and of course those incredible wines.
You could say that.
Both regions offer unique insights,
Into the diversity of France.
but in their own distinct ways.
I'm loving how this is all coming together.
We've covered so much ground already,
From Chardonnay grapes to ducal castles to the magic of terroir.
but I feel like we're just getting started.
You're absolutely right.
We've only scratched the surface.
Of what Burgundy has to offer.
There's a whole world of wineries, appellations, and tasting experiences waiting to be explored.
And I can't wait to dive deeper.
But for now, I think it's time we shift gears
And talk about the practicalities of actually planning a trip.
to the Burgundy wine route,
Get those notebooks ready, folks.
because things are about to get real.
So you're ready to trade those daydreams for plane tickets, huh?
Yes, let's get down to the nitty-gritty.
If our listener is serious about planning this trip
What are the absolute must-knows?
before they start packing their bags,
Well, first things first.
you've got to consider the time of year.
Burgundy is beautiful year-round.
But each season offers a completely different vibe.
Spring brings those vibrant blossoms.
And the excitement of bud break in the vineyards.
Summer is postcard perfect.
Think lush greenery and warm sunshine.
But it's also peak tourist season.
So expect larger crowds and higher prices.
So maybe not the best time for those seeking a tranquil escape.
Probably not.
But autumn, on the other hand, is pure magic.
The vineyards turn into a tapestry of fiery reds and golds.
And there's a palpable energy in the air as everyone gears up for harvest.
You might even have the chance to witness the grape harvest firsthand.
Which is a truly unique experience.
And what about the off-season?
Is Burgundy worth visiting during the winter months?
Winter in Burgundy is a hidden gem.
It's much quieter and more intimate.
Picture yourself cozying up by a fireplace,
In a charming village inn,
sipping a glass of red wine.
as the snow falls outside,
Plus, you'll likely find better deals on accommodation.
and avoid the summertime crowds.
So there's really no bad time to visit.
It just depends on what kind of experience you're looking for.
Exactly.
Once you've nailed down your travel dates.
You need to figure out how you're going to get around.
We touched on the high-speed trains from Paris.
But what about exploring the region itself?
I imagine those charming villages and vineyards are pretty spread out.
You're right.
Renting a car is definitely the most flexible option.
It allows you to explore at your own pace
Discover hidden gems off the beaten path.
and really immerse yourself in the beauty of the countryside,
Just remember those winding country roads can be a bit tricky,
especially after a long day of wine tasting.
so maybe designate a driver.
Or opt for those scenic bike paths I've heard so much about.
Exactly.
And if navigating on your own feels a bit daunting,
There are plenty of excellent tour operators.
specializing in Burgundy wine tours,
They handle everything from transportation and accommodation.
to tastings and even special excursions.
That sounds pretty stress-free.
It is.
And you'll have the added benefit of a local guide
Who can share their insider knowledge history.
and even personal anecdotes about the region.
Plus, you'll get to meet fellow wine enthusiasts from all over the world.
There's nothing quite like bonding over a shared love of good wine.
Now, speaking of wine,
Let's talk about the actual tasting experience.
do you have any advice for navigating the world of Burgundy wineries?
The most important thing is to make reservations.
Especially if you're visiting smaller family-run wineries.
Many of them require appointments for tastings.
So don't just show up expecting to waltz in and start swirling once you're at the tasting.
Remember to engage with the winemakers or staff,
Ask questions. Learn about the history of the estate.
the specific vineyards and the techniques they use.
This is where that knowledge of terroir we discussed earlier comes in handy.
You can impress them with your understanding.
Of how the soil climate and grape variety.
All come together to create that unique expression in the glass.
So it's not just about sipping and saying, that's good.
Exactly.
It's about using all your senses.
Sight, smell, taste, even touch.
To truly appreciate the wine,
Take your time, savor each sip
and notice how the flavors evolve.
as the wine breathes in the glass.
It sounds almost meditative.
Any other tips for making the most of a Burgundy wine tasting?
Don't be afraid to share your preferences.
With the winemaker or staff,
Tell them what you like, what you don't like.
and be open to trying new things
You might discover a new favorite wine.
you never would have considered otherwise.
And remember, there's no pressure to buy.
While supporting the wineries is great.
The primary goal of a tasting is to learn, enjoy, and expand your palate.
I love that philosophy.
It takes the pressure off.
It makes the whole experience more enjoyable.
Now, shifting gears slightly,
Let's talk about budgeting,
Burgundy is known for its prestigious wines.
which often come with a hefty price tag.
Is it possible to experience the wine route?
without breaking the bank.
Absolutely.
Burgundy can be enjoyed on a variety of budgets.
It's all about setting your priorities.
And being savvy with your spending,
You don't have to stay in luxury chateau
or dine at Michelin-starred restaurants every night.
to have an incredible time.
So where can our listener find those hidden gems,
This is more affordable
yet authentic experiences?
local tourism websites
And online travel forums are great resources.
for uncovering those hidden gems.
Look for charming guest houses and B&Bs.
Them smaller villages.
And don't be afraid to venture off the well-trodden tourist path.
Some of the most memorable experiences are found in those unexpected places.
It's all about embracing the spirit of adventure.
And being open to new discoveries, right?
Precisely.
And speaking of discoveries,
We can't forget about the culinary side of Burgundy.
we've talked about food and wine pairing
But are there any must-try dishes or regional specialties?
that our listeners should seek out.
I'm ready to take my taste buds on a journey.
Well, then you can't miss the beef bourguignon,
A slow-cooked beef stew simmered in red wine.
often Pinot Noir.
It's the quintessential Burgundian dish,
Hearty, flavorful.
and perfect for those cooler evenings.
Just the name alone evokes images of cozy fireplaces and rustic charm.
What else should we be adding to our culinary bucket list?
For a true taste of Burgundy,
You have to try the escargot
they're cooked in garlic, parsley butter,
and white wine.
and they're absolutely delicious.
Okay, I'll admit those might take a little courage for some.
But hey, when in Burgundy, right?
Exactly.
And if you're looking for something a little lighter,
The jambon persillé is a must-try,
it's a terrine of ham and parsley.
often served as a starter or a light lunch,
And of course, no trip to Burgundy is complete.
without sampling the regional cheeses.
Like époisse.
A pungent washed rind cheese.
That's sure to awaken your senses.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Bold flavors and rich textures that pair perfectly with those equally bold Burgundy wines.
You're catching on.
It's all about embracing the local flavors.
And indulging in the regional specialties that make Burgundy so unique.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our Burgundy deep dive,
I want to touch on something that often gets overlooked when planning a trip.
etiquette
Are there any cultural norms or customs
that our listeners should be aware of.
when visiting Burgundy?
I'm all about avoiding those awkward tourist faux pas.
That's a great point,
French etiquette is important,
especially in a region like Burgundy.
where tradition is highly valued.
So give us the inside scoop.
What are some key things to keep in mind?
Always greet people with a polite bonjour,
When entering a shop or restaurant,
even if you don't speak French.
it's a simple gesture that goes a long way in showing respect.
When tasting wine,
It's customary to swirl the glass,
sniff the aroma, take a small sip,
and then either swallow,
or discreetly spit into a spittoon.
and when dining, avoid putting your elbows on the table.
And wait for everyone to be served before starting to eat,
So basic table manners.
but with a French flair.
Precisely.
And remember a little effort to learn some basic French phrases.
Like merci or s'il vous plaît will go a long way
The locals will appreciate your attempt.
to communicate in their language
It shows respect,
and a willingness to engage with their culture.
which is what travel is all about.
Okay, I think we've given our listener a solid foundation.
For planning their Burgundy wine route adventure,
From choosing the right season and transportation,
to navigating tastings and embracing local customs,
but as we both know,
the real magic of travel,
lies in those unexpected discoveries.
those off-the-beaten-path moments that create lasting memories.
Absolutely.
Let's dive into some of those hidden gems.
That will truly make this Burgundy experience unforgettable.
Okay, so we've talked about those iconic vineyards,
Charming villages.
a grand chateau,
But now I'm really craving those hidden gems.
the places only the locals seem to know about,
What are some off-the-beaten-path treasures in Burgundy?
that our listeners should add to their itinerary.
Well, I'm happy to share some of my favorite secret spots.
One that always comes to mind is Flavigny-sur-Ozerain.
Imagine a tiny hilltop village straight out of a fairy tale.
Cobblestone streets,
Medieval ramparts.
stunning views of the surrounding countryside.
Oh, I can already picture myself.
Wandering those streets,
Completely lost in time.
yeah, you'll feel like you've stepped back centuries.
And while you're there,
You absolutely have to visit the Abbaye de Flavigny.
it's a Benedictine abbey.
That's been producing those famous anise candies for centuries.
You can take a tour.
And even watch the candy making process.
It's a real treat for all the senses.
Okay, that's officially going on my must-do list.
What else have you got for us?
If our listener is a nature lover,
Then the Roche de Salitre is a must-see.
it's this dramatic limestone cliff,
That rises abruptly from the vineyards.
and it's an iconic landmark in southern Burgundy.
The panoramic views of the Macony region.
are simply breathtaking.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Stunning views and delicious treats.
Burgundy seems to have it all.
You're catching on.
Now for a unique cultural experience.
I'd recommend the Hospices de Beaune.
It's a former hospital dating back to the 15th century,
Renowned for its stunning Flemish-style roof,
and its annual wine auction.
which raises funds for local charities.
So a blend of history
Architecture,
and a philanthropy all in one place.
that's pretty amazing.
It is.
And speaking of history,
No exploration of Burgundy would be complete.
without a visit to Cluny Abbey.
It was once the most powerful abbey in Europe.
And although it's now in ruins
You can still feel the grandeur.
of this medieval masterpiece,
You'll be walking through the footsteps of monks
and experiencing a tangible connection.
to Burgundy's rich past.
Wow, it sounds like a journey through time.
It truly is.
And these are just a few examples,
Burgundy is brimming with hidden gems.
waiting to be discovered.
Talk to the locals.
Explore the back roads.
Rent a bike and just see where the path takes you.
You never know what treasures you'll stumble upon.
That's what I love about travel.
Those unexpected moments of discovery.
Now let's say our listener has experienced the best of Burgundy.
They've sipped their way through the vineyards.
They've explored the charming villages.
They've even unearthed those hidden gems.
What other regions in France?
Might they want to consider for their next adventure,
Well, if they loved the wine culture of Burgundy,
but are craving something a little different?
I'd recommend the Rhone Valley.
It's located south of Burgundy,
And it's known for its iconic appellations.
like Côte du Rhône and Châteauneuf-du-Pape.
Think sun-drenched vineyards
Ancient Roman ruins.
and a more Mediterranean vibe.
That sounds incredibly tempting.
But what if they're looking for a complete change of scenery?
Well, if they were captivated by the charm and history,
Of Burgundy's villages?
they might fall in love with the Alsace region,
It's in northeastern France,
bordering Germany.
and it has this unique blend of French and German influences.
Imagine colorful, half-timbered houses
Flower-filled window boxes.
and rolling vineyards producing world-class white wines.
I'm getting serious travel envy right now.
So many incredible options to choose from.
That's the beauty of France, isn't it?
Every region has its own unique character.
Its own stories to tell.
Well, I think we've successfully planted the seed.
For our listeners' next French adventure,
But before we wrap up this Burgundy deep dive,
I want to bring it back to the heart of our conversation.
the Burgundy wine route.
What's one lasting thought
One key takeaway.
that you hope our listener will remember from this episode?
Well, I hope they remember that Burgundy is more than just a destination.
It's an experience
It's a place where history, culture, and nature are so deeply intertwined.
that they become inseparable.
So when you plan your trip,
Don't just focus on the wine.
immerse yourself in the region's rich tapestry.
Explore the villages.
Talk to the locals.
I'll savor the food
Get lost in the vineyards.
and let the spirit of Burgundy enchant you.
Beautifully said. I think that's the perfect note to end on.
We've gone from Chardonnay grapes and rolling vineyards.
The ducal castles and hidden gems.
Hopefully you now have a much richer understanding of Burgundy.
And the wine road experience.
But as with any great adventure,
The real journey begins when you take this knowledge.
and embark on your own exploration.
So go forth, savor every sip,
Discover something new.
and let the magic of Burgundy unfold before you.
Cheers!